welcome back to Halloween Horror Reviews 2025. I hope y'all are having a great time so far with this year's reviews because, man, I am having a blast. When it comes down to today's particular review, this is actually a movie that I covered back in 2011 when I did my Halloween Horror-thon, and I figured that for Halloween Horror Reviews 2025 that I would revisit and re-review this movie because not only do I find this movie very underrated, but also this movie is badass. Moving on to today's review, I'm here to talk about 2007's 30 Days of Night, directed by David Slade. In the events of the film, we follow an Alaskan town that has plunged into darkness for about a month, and because of this event happening, this town is attacked by a gang of bloodthirsty vampires. Before I continue on with today's video, I just wanted to say, welcome to my channel, everybody. For those of you who are coming by my channel for the very first time, be sure to hit the subscribe button to not miss a feature video, whether it's a feature review, reaction, top 5, top 10, or whatever I've coming your way, and join me on my journey to 10K subscribers and beyond, because believe me when I say this, guys, you are not going to want to miss the cool stuff I have coming your way. And for those of you who are coming back to my channel, by the way, welcome back, everybody. You have no idea how happy I am to see your faces once again. And let's also start our conversation below as well. What do you guys think of 30 Days of Night? Because I know this film seems to be polarizing, but are you on the side of the coin that likes the movie, or are you on the side of the coin that dislikes the film? Let me know below. Alrighty, guys, so let's get into 30 Days of Night. Damien! This movie, guys, holy crap. Before I continue on with this review of 30 Days of Night, I have to talk about the very first time that this movie was exposed to me. And it wasn't that I was shown this movie. I mean, technically I was, but the first time that I heard about this movie was actually on a show. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was on Deadliest Warrior. I know it was one of those Spike TV shows where it was one of those specials where they pitted certain types of enemies against one another. But there was a special Halloween episode where it was zombies. I think it was the Dawn of the Dead 28 Days of Later zombies against Steve Niles' vampires from 30 Days of Night. If I remember correctly, the end results, the people that are representing the zombies were so pissed, and Steve Niles was like, hey, you put zombies against my vampires, they don't stand a chance. And if I remember correctly, I did not see 30 Days of Night until I think a couple of years afterwards, because one of my closest friends had said, hey, have you not seen 30 Days of Night? Because if you haven't, we're watching this movie right now. And this had to have been at least a good 10, maybe even a good 15 years ago. This was a movie that not only showcased that vampires can not only be scary, but also that vampires could be badass. And unfortunately, if I remember correctly, this movie came out right before those movies came out. Twilight came out, and it, didn't do so for vampires. It took a while for vampires to come back, but they did, and man, vampire movies have had such a great resurgence, and I am all here for it. Not only is 30 Days of Night such a badass film and a thrilling vampire movie, but I do still quite love the movie, even though I do have my issues with the movie. But regardless, Josh Hartnett is such a great actor, and I gotta say right now, especially when it comes down to this ticket of movies, I am so happy that Josh Hartnett is having this resurgence as an actor, because if you ask me, Josh Hartnett is one of the most underrated actors out there, because he can not only give such a great and a vulnerable performance, but he is such a great leading man. And to me, 30 Days of Night is one of the examples as to why Josh Hartnett does such a great job of portraying this small town sheriff that is not only having his own personal life problems, knowing with his ex-wife, but not to mention as well, helping out this town, this community, not only get ready for this 30 Days of Night plunge, but also, not to mention as well, once his vampires come in, him doing his best to just keep, group morale up, this community morale up, and helping them stay in the ground, or just helping them survive, period, against these blood-sucking creatures. Ben Foster is such an awesome actor, and it blows my mind to this day. If I remember correctly, this man has not been nominated for an Oscar. This man has only turned in nothing but great performances, and his performance here is so good. And even though that Ben Foster doesn't have the most screen time in this movie, but man, he has got damn. There is a scene involving him and Josh Hartnett in this diner that he just gives this vibe that, oh my god, you just want to get away from this guy because he is nothing but trouble because of, the events of the sad movie. Danny Houston is so good in this movie, not to mention it as well, he is terrifying. One of my favorite moments of this movie with Danny Houston is when he is confronting this person that is just calling for God, and it says, God? Oh, God. No, God. Danny Houston is one of those actors that can give a great performance, and his performance of this gang leader in 30 Days of Night, and once again, like with Ben Foster, even though that Danny Houston doesn't have a lot of screen time, but man, once Danny Houston does take the stage, he definitely gives the most. And speaking of which, that brings me on to the next thing that I love about 30 Days of Night, and that is the look and the design of the vampires in this movie. I know that 30 Days of Night is based on a graphic novel series, which I have not read, but I do want to read it, especially knowing that we're in spooky season, but regardless, guys, knowing you're looking into a character, or I should say, a group of characters' eyes that have no soul, and those razor-sharp teeth that, holy crap, the vampires in this movie not only look scary, but these things, the way that these things go as predators, holy crap. I really wish this movie got more love, and it just blows my mind this movie is as polarizing as. Another thing in particular that I love about this movie is the film's storytelling. Knowing how this movie takes place in this small community, this small town of Alaska, and especially knowing of what this town is going through on two different opposite ends, knowing that not only this town is about to go through an annual 30 Days of Night plunge into darkness, but also the fact that to make matters worse, this group of vampires come in and raid this small town, trying to turn everybody, not only turning everybody into vampires, but showing the world that, hey guys, we exist. Something else that I gotta mention in terms of the storytelling is all the personal stakes going on within this town. Not only this community caring for each other and then trying to help each other out, especially with the sheriff, Josh Hartnett's character, trying to say, hey, just do this, hold out until the power comes back on, and not to mention it as well, knowing that things are slowly getting worse and worse and worse over time. At its core, besides it being a thrilling vampire film, 30 Days of Night at its core is a survival thriller of watching this town trying to survive the cold, trying to survive this annual 30 Days of Night plunge while they're being attacked by a ravenous group of vampires. Generally, not only investing, it's exhilarating, and once you get to a certain point, man, it's actually quite terrifying. Another thing that I love about 30 Days of Night is the atmosphere and the overall just sense of chills this movie brings about. 30 Days of Night is one of those movies that I personally feel they can not only watch for not only spooky season, but it's also a really good Christmas horror film, knowing this film takes place in the winter time. Not only will I definitely rewatch this movie again this month, but also I actually do want to rewatch this movie for Christmas time, for when it does come around. The cold atmosphere of watching people going through this town and seeing the snow just coming down. And by the way, how the film is shot, oh my god. I seriously love the film's sense of not only atmosphere, but the cinematography. David Slade directs not only such an atmospheric vampire thriller, but also a film that it has this great cold chilly feel to it that is not to mention it as well. A film that at times does get quite frightening. I personally love the film's final couple of shots. While the film has a sad ending at the same time, man, the film's final couple of shots I think are fucking brilliant. I love how the film's last couple of shots look. They're so great.
Happy purge, you old fuck!
While 30 Days of Night is a badass and a very underrated vampire flick, absolutely, at the same time, it doesn't quite get, at least for me, a top tier vampire film. One of the reasons why is because there are some characters, when you see them and how they act with, you know, the townspeople and their fellow neighbors, you can just tell that they're simply just that. There is a particular character in this movie that, honest to God, how they're acting, I just went, you know, I like you, but right now, I kind of wish a vampire would just bite your fucking throat. There are at least, I want to say, 2, maybe 3 characters that you could just tell are there simply just for cannon fodder, and they're there just for a vampire to just suck the life out of them. There's a scene, maybe 2 scenes, where the action is so frantic and how it's cut and edited, it gets to a point where it's cut and chopped up so much to the point where I couldn't really tell what was going on. And here's the thing, there are some moments in this movie where it actually does get quite frightening and the tension is so high up, but there are moments within these sequences that are so frantically edited that it did make it really hard for me to see what was going on. While the final fight between Josh Hartnett, when, spoiler, and I might as well talk about this, when Josh Hartnett decides to become a vampire only because he's trying to help his community and his town survive. While the final fight sequence between a vampired Josh Hartnett and Danny Houston, while this fight is badass as can be, I mean, my god, the final fight, while it does lead to an insane and a badass kill, it was too short. This fight, I feel like, could have lasted another at least a couple of minutes. The moment that the final blow, that the ending blow happened, I just went, that could have gone for I wanted that to be longer, guys. Come on! But it ends with such a great fatality. But man, I do wish the fight was just a tad bit longer. Just a little bit longer. So overall, while it doesn't rank amongst the greatest vampire movies of all time, at the same time, 30 Days of Night is a badass and an underrated vampire flick that if you have not seen it, please check it out. It is such a great time. It is an awesome vampire flick. All in all, I'm going to give 30 Days of Night a 4 out of 5. 30 Days of Night is only such a great vampire flick for spooky season, but it is also a great vampire film for the winter, a great film, period. I hope you all enjoyed my review of 30 Days of Night. If so, please hit the like button, or if you dislike this review, hit the dislike button. If you guys want to see it in my previous 2 videos, please click it right there or right there. And of course, until my next review for Halloween Horror Reviews 2025 goes live, I will see you all next time.